Hello my dear viewers, I would like to thank you for watching the video and I wanted to say subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will be very grateful and you will not miss new videos. Enjoy the video. It started with a coffee. My name's Evelyn and I'm a junior editor at a small publishing house in Chicago. My days are mostly filled with manuscripts and emails, but my evenings are sacred. Just me, a cozy corner table at Blackbird Café, and my favorite caramel macchiato. One Thursday night, as I flipped through the latest novel submission, a man sat at the table next to mine. He was hard to miss, clean-cut, late 30s, with a confident smile that instantly drew attention. "You look serious," he said, nodding at my open laptop. I looked up, startled. "Oh, just work," I replied, forcing a polite smile. "Ah, a workaholic," he teased. "I'm Thomas, by the way." "Evelyn," I said cautiously, but something about his easy demeanor made me relax. We talked for a while about books, the weather, and even how Blackbird had the best coffee in the city. He was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. When he left, he smiled and said, "See you around, Evelyn." It felt harmless, but something about the way his smile lingered made me uneasy. Over the next week, Thomas kept showing up at Blackbird Café. Always around the same time, always sitting at the table next to mine. At first, it felt like a coincidence, but after the third or fourth time, it started to feel intentional. Not that I minded exactly. He was polite, charming, and seemed genuinely interested in me. But there were moments, subtle ones, where something about him felt off, like when I asked him what he did for a living. "I'm in security," he said one evening, swirling his coffee absent-mindedly. "What kind of security?" I pressed, curious. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "High-risk clients, sensitive situations. It's not as exciting as it sounds." The way he said it was casual, almost too casual, as if he was rehearsed. Later that night, as I walked home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I turned around more than once, but the streets behind me were empty. It was probably nothing, I told myself. Just paranoia, but the feeling didn't go away. The next time I saw Thomas, I wasn't at the cafe. It was in the news. That morning started like any other. I was scrolling through my phone at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, when a headline caught my eye. "Woman found dead in Chicago River. Police suspect foul play." The article described a woman named Rachel Morgan, mid-30s, who had been reported missing 2 days ago. Her body had been found in the early hours of the morning, wrapped in plastic and weighed down with bricks. My stomach churned. It was horrible, but what really stopped me in my tracks was the location. Rachel had last been seen leaving a coffee shop, Blackbird Café, my cafe. I set my mug down, hands shaking as I scrolled further. That's when I saw it. A brief mention of a witness report. Someone had seen Rachel talking to a man shortly before she left the cafe. The description was vague but unsettlingly familiar. A tall, clean-cut man in his late 30s wearing a dark coat. Thomas, it had to be him. The thought sent a cold wave of nausea through me. I tried to tell myself it was just a coincidence. After all, how many men in Chicago fit that description, but the timing was too perfect. I remembered how Thomas had joked about being in security and how he always avoided giving too many details about his work. My mind raced as I pieced together the little things I'd noticed but ignored. The way he'd always shown up at the cafe at the same time as me, his ability to steer conversations away from himself, and the strange way he'd smiled when I first met him. I couldn't stop myself. I Googled his name. Nothing came up. Not a single result. A man as friendly and outgoing as Thomas should have some kind of online presence, a LinkedIn profile, a Facebook page, something. The fact that he didn't only made me more suspicious. By the time I arrived at the cafe that evening, my nerves were frayed. I wasn't sure if I was hoping to see him or praying he wouldn't show up. He did. Evelyn. His voice was as cheerful as ever as he slid into the chair across from me. "You're a hard woman to track down." "Busy week," I forced a smile, my heart pounding. "Yeah, something like that." We made small talk for a while, but I could barely focus. All I could think about was the article, the dead woman, and the way the witness had described him. Finally, I worked up the courage to ask, "Hey, Thomas, do you remember Rachel Morgan? She used to come here sometimes." He didn't miss a beat. "Rachel Morgan? Can't say I do. Should I?" His tone was casual, but his eyes were fixed on mine, sharp and unblinking. It was as if he was watching for a reaction. "No," I said quickly, shaking my head. "I just thought maybe you'd met her. She was on the news." He tilted his head, his smile never wavering. "Oh, I don't pay much attention to the news, to depressing." I felt like I couldn't breathe. That night, as I walked home, I couldn't stop glancing over my shoulder. The streets were quiet, but the silence felt heavy, like the city was holding its breath. When I finally got to my apartment, I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, trying to calm my racing heart. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from an unknown number. "You're asking the wrong questions, Evelyn. Stop now." I stared at the text on my phone, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. My hands were trembling as I reread the message. "You're asking the wrong questions, Evelyn. Stop now." I didn't recognize the number, but whoever it was, they knew my name and they knew I'd been asking about Rachel. I wanted to believe it was a prank, maybe a coincidence, but deep down, I knew better. I locked all my doors and windows, double-checking every latch, then sat on my couch, clutching my phone like a lifeline. My mind raced through possibilities. Was it Thomas, someone connected to him? Or was I just being paranoid? I decided to call my best friend, Jess. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, what's up?" she asked, her voice light. "Jess, I think I'm in trouble," I blurted. There was a pause. "Evelyn, slow down. What happened?" I told her everything, the news article, my suspicions about Thomas, and the text. As I spoke, I realized how crazy it all sounded. But Jess didn't laugh or tell me I was overreacting. "That's terrifying," she said quietly. "Have you gone to the police?" "I don't have any proof," I said. "Just a gut feeling and a creepy text from an unknown number." "What are they supposed to do with that?" Jess hesitated. "You need to stay away from him, Evelyn. Block the number. Stop going to that cafe. And if anything else happens, anything, you call me first, okay?" I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, "Okay?" That night, I barely slept. Every creak and groan of the apartment building made me jump, and I kept imagining shadows moving outside my window. The next morning, I woke to another text from the same number. "You didn't listen. Meet me at Blackbird tonight. 8 p.m. Come alone." My stomach sank. The implication was clear: if I didn't show up, there would be consequences. All day, I couldn't focus. My thoughts kept circling back to the message. Meet me at Blackbird tonight. 8 p.m. Come alone. It wasn't a request, it was a threat. Just beg me not to go. It's obviously a setup, Evelyn. You don't know what this guy is capable of. I don't have a choice, I said, my voice shaky. If I don't show, who knows what he'll do. Jess wouldn't let it go. Then at least let me call the police. You don't have to face this alone. She was right. I hated the idea of involving them without solid proof, but I was out of options. I told her to call and share everything I told her, then hung up and started preparing for the night. By 7:45, I was sitting in my car outside Blackbird Café, my palms sweaty against the steering wheel. The café was dimly lit, and through the windows I could see a handful of patrons, none of them familiar, except him. Thomas sat at a corner table, stirring a cup of coffee like he didn't have a care in the world. His calm demeanor sent a fresh wave of dread through me. I got out of the car, my legs trembling as I crossed the street. I stepped inside, the bell above the door jingling softly. The warmth of the café was a stark contrast to the icy fear clawing at my chest. Thomas looked up and smiled. Evelyn, right on time. I forced a smile and sat across from him. You wanted to meet. Here I am. He leaned back, studying me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I knew you'd come. You're too curious for your own good. What do you want, Thomas? I asked, keeping my voice steady. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket. My heart stopped as his hand emerged, holding a folded piece of paper. Read it, he said, sliding it across the table. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. I unfolded the paper, and my blood ran cold. It was a photo of me walking to my apartment, sitting at the café, even through my living room window. You've been watching me, I whispered, my throat dry. Thomas smirked. It's my job to know my targets. Targets? My voice broke. What are you talking about? His expression turned cold. Someone hired me to kill you, Evelyn. But I declined the job. I stared at him, paralyzed with fear. Why are you telling me this? He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. Because now they're sending someone else, and I'm the only chance you've got to survive. His words hung in the air like a death sentence. Someone else, I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. Why would anyone want me dead? Thomas shrugged, his calm demeanor unshaken. I don't ask questions. I just complete the assignments, well, most of them. He sipped his coffee like we were discussing the weather. I felt lightheaded, my stomach twisting into knots. You said you declined. Why? Why are you helping me? Thomas studied me for a long moment, his gaze unreadable. I'm not a monster, Evelyn. I don't take contracts that don't feel justified. He smirked like the word was some kind of joke. And you're just an ordinary woman. Whoever wants you gone must have a reason, but it's not my problem anymore. His words felt like both a relief and a threat. I wasn't sure whether to thank him or run for my life. What do I do now? I asked, my voice cracking. He leaned back, his smile fading. You disappear. Change your name, your location, everything. Because the person they'll send next won't hesitate. And once you're in their sights, it's over. No, I said, shaking my head. I can't just leave my life behind. My friends, my job. Thomas cut me off, his tone sharp. If you want to stay alive, you'll do what I say. The weight of his words hit me like a freight train. He wasn't being dramatic, he was giving me my only option. But before I could respond, the cafe door opened and two men in suits walked in. Thomas's eyes flicked toward them, his body tensing. "Well," he muttered, "looks like we're out of time." I followed his gaze and my blood ran cold. The men weren't ordering coffee. They were scanning the room, their eyes landing on me. "Is it them?" I whispered, panic rising in my chest. Thomas nodded, standing casually. "Stay calm, follow my lead." Before I could say anything, he strode toward the men, his movements confident and deliberate. They barely reacted as he approached, but I caught the subtle exchange, a glance, a nod. Then, without warning, Thomas moved. He shoved the first man into a table, sending coffee and chairs flying. The second man reached into his jacket, but Thomas was faster. In one fluid motion, he disarmed him and knocked him unconscious with the butt of the gun. "Let's go," he barked, grabbing my arm and pulling me toward the back exit. We burst into the alley, the cold night air stinging my face. I could hear shouts behind us, but Thomas didn't stop. "Why are you doing this?" I yelled, struggling to keep up. He glanced back, his face grim. "Let's just say I don't like competition." We drove for hours, leaving the city behind. Thomas didn't explain where we were going, and I didn't ask. My mind was too busy reeling from everything that had happened. When he finally pulled over at a rundown motel in the middle of nowhere, he turned to me. "This is where we part ways." I stared at him, disbelief written all over my face. "That's it. You're just going to leave me here." "You'll be safe for now," he said. "I've bought you time, but it's up to you to stay off their radar." I wanted to scream at him, to demand answers, but I knew it was pointless. Thomas wasn't my savior. He was a killer who had spared me for reasons I might never understand. He handed me a burner phone and a small envelope of cash. "Don't call anyone you know. Don't go back to your old life. Trust me, Evelyn, if you do, they'll find you." And just like that, he was gone, disappearing into the night like a shadow. I stood there, clutching the phone and the cash, wondering if I'd ever feel safe again.